I'd like to welcome you all back to the IE427 garage. Today we have something a little bit special for you. We actually have a featured car that we're going to be focusing on today. And who we have here is Mike Hartman, the owner of the car. And this is a Mark III that Mike built about how many years ago?
10.5 years.
About 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And we're going to turn the camera around and we're going to have Mike give us a little tour of the car. Okay, Mike, pretend that I'm, at a car show and I walk up to you and I ask you to tell me some special things or tell me about your car.
This car is a 2010 3.1. It took me 1.5 years to build it, and little by little I kept assembling parts and saving money to buy all the parts I wanted, because I bought a partial kit, not a complete kit. Because there's a lot of parts I'd seen on other cars that I wanted to upgrade immediately.
Well, that's another question. When you bought or when you initially ordered your kit, was the complete kit even available? Because just as a for instance, Mike, in my case, the complete kit wasn't available. You know, mine's an early early Mark III. There wasn't a 3.1 when I ordered mine. And at that time, Factory 5 only sold a base kit. That was the only kit. And so, was the complete kit available when you did your car?
Yeah, the complete kit was available, but I looked on the forum and I could see so many people were selling so many parts that they had upgraded. I didn't want to buy all those parts I know I was going to sell.
Okay, so while we're on that subject, what are those parts? What's an example of some of those parts that you bought from the community? Yeah. That you didn't necessarily buy directly from Factory 5, and what did it allow you to save any money?
Didn't save money, but I built the car not using any used parts or donor parts. So the whole car was built with new parts.
Okay, I'm going to cheat because I know these cars pretty well. Now, are you using SN95 spindles?
I am using,
because not to cloud the water here, but that's a donor part, Mike. So. Is that one of the parts that you completely disassembled, refurbished?
That's one of the parts I got from Cannonball and cleaned up totally and used that.
Okay.
And the drive shaft in the car was a Mustang drive shaft that I had cut down and re-welded and balanced.
Okay, okay.
But majority of the parts on the car were absolutely brand new. The wheels are pin drive wheels that I bought from a vendor down in Southern California. And from the outside of the gills on the car I bought from a vendor in Florida. They're polished stainless. The front bumperettes I bought from, it used to be in Florida, now he's up in the Bay Area in San Francisco. And that's where I bought the glass wind wings and the vendor, and the roll bar I bought from Factory 5 painted, and then I stripped it and I ground down the weld on it so it looked perfect, and then I had it chrome plated.
Okay, so you actually got the roll bar with your kit, and it was the black powder coated version.
No, it was just spray painted so it wouldn't rust.
Oh, really?
It had nothing on it.
Oh, okay.
It was beer.
Okay. As we walk around the rest of the car, what other features do you have that you'd like to point out?
Well, I took the hinges and had those mounted on the interior because I thought that looked a lot cleaner.
It does. It does.
I had a Mark 3.1. The bodies doesn't come rolled, so I had that done when the car was painted.
And who painted your car?
Jeff Miller down in Temecula.
And are you happy? Are you happy with the paint job that Jeff did?
I was absolutely thrilled about the paint job. I couldn't believe it.
Okay. Well, those of us that know Jeff know that he can be quite a character. Do you have any special stories with him or Jose?
No, not with Jose, but with Jeff's dogs he had. They were crotch dogs, and they would come up to you, and you'd want to pet them, and they'd come right up between your legs and lift up.
Do you remember the nickname that Jeff had for for the Rottweiler?
No.
Well, I do. His name was Kupchak. So
for good reason.
So yeah, very lovable dog, but a little bit forceful.
Yeah. So I took the dash when I built the car and took it over to All American Racing in Santa Ana, and I had Dan Gurney sign my dash as well as Phil Remington.
Wow.
And got to speak with both of the gentlemen, and that was a true experience.
So there's the two signatures that he has on the dash. Now, when it came to the interior, did you go by the Factory 5 template, or did you decide to do something a little bit different and on your own?
Well, the Factory 5, the carpet that they give with the partial kit is not period correct. So I bought this carpeting and used their carpeting as a pattern.
And how did that work out?
It worked out great. It's still here. It wears great, and it's just one more thing that sets aside my car from someone else's.
Now, did you decide to do any of the heat and sound mat under the carpeting? Did you do anything to insulate the cockpit in any way?
Yeah, I use fat mat. I believe that's what it was called.
Okay.
Put fat mat everywhere, and also in the trunk.
Now, did you drive the car before you had all of the interior finished? And did that heat and sound mat make a big difference in the amount of heat that migrated into the cockpit?
I drove, before I finished the car, when it was go-karting, I drove it a minimum of 100 miles in my neighborhood.
Wow.
I used to drive my son to school in it, and the seats weren't even bolted in.
I think we'll get into that question about your neighbors a little bit later. But let's open the hood and let's talk a little bit about what you chose for a powertrain.
And the scoop on this car came with a scoop. I like the look of the screws here, so I had that scoop cut off, added this scoop, and then if you look on the back side, you see I had a setback on there, so you don't look straight down from the hole and see the engine.
So that's all work that Jeff Miller did for you?
Correct. It just
and so for those of you that don't know, on the Mark IIIs and befores for the Factory 5 Roadsters, the scoops came molded in. So it's not a simple matter of just not installing the scoop. That scoop had to be taken off. Yeah. The hole needed to be massaged, and then Jeff had to, this is probably one of Jeff's scoops. He does the ones he makes out of fiberglass.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Very, very nice.
So that, and then working on, because I had ridden in other friends' cars, one was Darren's, and on a very hot day, so I learned that you definitely want to put cooling for the foot boxes. But the hose that came with that kit was terrible. So you can see the hose I used, never had a problem.
And where'd you end up getting that hose from?
It's a local vendor in Anaheim.
Okay.
That sells those hoses. That worked out really, really well. And then I have to go back on not using any used parts because I did put a used cooling fan in it that I picked up at, I'll say, a recycling yard, not a junkyard.
So like a pick and pull.
A pick and pull, correct.
So it's one of the yards that you can actually walk in, harvest the parts yourself,
correct.
Go to the cashier, pay for the part, and then you take it home with you.
And pay, like 1/10 of what it would cost at a Ford dealer.
Okay, so for an example, when you built the car, how much did you pay for that fan, if you remember?
Gosh, not more than $30.
Wow.
Not more than $30, and then I just attached it to the existing radiator that came with the car. And it's worked perfect. The car has never overheated.
Wow, that's great. So since we're talking about the engine,
yeah.
What did you choose for an engine?
Well, I had ridden in another friend's car, Kuros, who had this engine, and he gave me his car for the day.
Wow, some friend.
Yeah,
I wouldn't let you drive my car.
I didn't. Kuros never driven my car. But I drove his car, and I loved the power. And I chose the same engine that they no longer make. It's a 392 Ford racing engine, a crate motor. They don't make it because people don't like that number. They like 427 number.
Right, and this, for any of you that don't know, this is a Windsor block. It's a 351 block that is a factory bore but it has a stroke crank in it.
Correct.
And so with that, you get a little bit more wall thickness on the cylinders, but you don't get that 427 number. And this, since it's 10 years old, this would be a 2-bolt main for the block.
Right.
Versus the newer Ford racing blocks, which are the Boss blocks and a 4-bolt main.
Yeah.
So have you been happy with this combination?
Absolutely. This car has close to 36,000 miles on it.
So you drive this thing?
It's been on every track in California and mid-Ohio.
Wow.
And I've had it up to speed out at Fontana here on their straightaway to see what it would do.
Now, what did you decide to back the engine with as far as transmission?
The transmission, I found out early in life that if you want to build a car and make it fast, all the parts have to be. You can't scrimp, on something as meaningful like the transmission. It's got to be a heavy duty. Overkill's good. So I have a Tremec 600.
A TKO 600.
A TKO 600 in this, and then with a drive shaft loop and a scatter shield bell housing.
Now, I noticed when we looked on the inside of the car, it looks like your shifter's in a different position than a standard Cobra would be.
Right.
So how did you achieve that?
That transmission has 3 positions on it where you can move the shifting location. So I moved it up because I want it right where I'm driving, the closest to my steering wheel, and then I shortened it.
And how's that worked out for you?
It's a beautiful thing.
Now, a lot of people have complaints about the TKO transmissions in general. They're very notchy. They're almost like driving a big semi-truck because they just don't want to go directly into gear. What's been your experience with that?
Transmission has been flawless.
Now, has it gotten better over time? Or
No,
is it still shift like it did when you first got it?
It's loosened up a little, so it goes into gear a lot easier, but I can tell you on a track, when you're going down a straightaway at Willow Springs at 140 and you need to shift down because you're coming to a left turn, you want it to shift down. And this transmission does it every time. I've never had a problem.
Now, behind that Tremec transmission, you have to have a rear end choice that you decided on. What did you decide for the rear suspension?
I have independent rear suspension with this. You can get the pumpkin, either cast iron, which is what they put in the Thunderbirds, the Super Coupes, or you can get aluminum, which is what they put in the Lincolns. And I really wanted a little weight in the rear. I felt that would help balance the car.
Okay.
So I went with cast iron in the rear and then totally rebuilt the whole differential.
Now, the pin drive wheels can often add a little bit complexity to your rear end choice and your front suspension choice. Did you find that when you were going to install all the parts in the back that they weren't exactly according to the manual because you had chosen to go with the pin drive wheels?
When you order the pin drive axles, they come shorter. So everything fit perfect. I had to get the bolt pattern had to be changed, but again, Cannonball at the time helped me out and set me up with that.
And when you say you had to have the lugs changed, that rear end assembly and those lugs and hubs all come out of different vehicles rather than a Mustang type donor. So what vehicles do those come out of, and is that the reason that they have to be changed? Because they're a different lug pattern?
It's a different lug pattern for the wheels I wanted to use, and also it doesn't fit the plate that has the attachment for these wheels, and the axles that come with that are also very lightweight because the original car, the Super Coupe axles, the 6-cylinder they put in that car is not like the horsepower.
So when you say the Super Coupe, you're referring to which car?
The Thunderbird.
Okay.
The Thunderbird. So those axles are not strong. So I located a place, and they made me custom axles for my car.
Wow.
Guaranteed 650 horsepower, nothing would happen.
And have you ever had problems with them?
Since I put those in, none.
That's great.
None.
That's great.
None. And 10-inch brakes in the rear and 14-inch brakes in the front.
And what variety of brakes are those?
Well, the rear brakes are the 10-inch brakes that came out of the Super Coupe Thunderbird. Never had a problem with them. And the front brakes are out of an SVT Mustang.
Okay, so they look like from here they are the 2-piston PBR Cobra brakes.
Correct.
Okay.
But the car they're built for is a 3,400 pound car. And this car is basically 2,300 pounds.
Did you have any special concerns when it came to a brake pad compound? Are you running a street pad? Are you running a race pad? Something a little more aggressive?
I currently am running the SVT brake pads. And I bought the last 3 pairs they had in the U.S.
Okay.
And so I have those. Some tracks that I've been on are really hard on brakes.
Okay.
But they work great, and this car, my brakes don't fade on a track, so I don't have a problem, and I have manual brakes.
Wow, manual brakes. Now, when you bought your kit, you said the complete kit had already started to being sold. Was the Wilwood pedal box part of your build? Was it available when you built your car? Or did you go with something else?
It might have been available. I was not aware of it. So mine is the factory Mustang pedal box.
And that leads into another question. You know, you're a big guy. You're my size or maybe a little bit bigger. You've got clodhopper feet. What are some of the limitations for a larger guy getting into one of these cars?
You know, when I built the car, I put the seat almost on the floor, tipped it back a little bit. I had the pedal box. I spread the pedals out a little bit. And most of the time when I drive it, I use driving shoes, which are really narrow.
Okay.
And so
okay.
That works out really well. But there's plenty of room. My fear is that my head with a helmet on a track is higher than the roll bar.
Wow. So while we're still talking about brakes, and I didn't mean to sidetrack you there, what did you just decide for on tires? And how many sets have you had on the car in the 30,000 plus miles?
When I first bought the tires, I put Sumis on them, Sumitomos.
Okay.
And they just didn't work at all. I might also been driving on an ice rink.
And how many miles did you have those on the car?
Probably about 5,000 miles.
Okay.
And so I got rid of those, and I bought Kumos. Kumo X-S's.
Okay.
And those were great, except now they no longer make the size that I use because I have 17-inch wheels.
Okay.
And so now I have the 01s, the Nitto 01s.
The NTO ones?
The NTO ones, which work excellent. And I would rather my tires wear out than age out.
Understand. Now, we don't get a whole lot of rain here in Southern California, but I know firsthand that the NTO ones can be a little slick with a little bit of moisture on the ground. Do you have any special procedures you go through when leaving the house on a damp morning so that you don't end up bringing the back end of the car around?
If it's raining, the car stays in the garage.
Understood.
I have no wipers. I have no windows. I have no top. It's Southern California. It doesn't rain very much at all.
Okay.
So if it's a rainy day, the car, it doesn't like it. I won't take it out to exercise it.
All right. Are there any other features on the car that you'd like to point out while we're doing our little walk around?
I have I put in a turkey pan because the air cleaner I had was big, beautiful Ford racing pan, but under track conditions, the engine torques and it would hit the underside of my hood.
Okay.
And so a good friend of mine, Frank Messina, had a turkey pan, and I looked at his and installed that. And that really helps to keep my carburetor cooler. And although the air filter on this is the same size as the original Cobra 427 air filter, on the track I noticed no difference with the decreased airflow.
So now, is this something you stole off of Frank's car? Or is it something that you just saw in his car and then he told you where to buy it? Because I just want to make sure that we understand.
No, Frank has one very similar to what I have, and he told me a vendor, and they made this for me, and then I installed it on my car.
Very cool. So we'll take a little bit closer look at that. And now, does that seal against the bottom of the hood, or is the gaskety material around that kind of just there for show?
Pretty much there for show you don't cut your hands.
Okay.
Yeah. Manual clutch. I ran aluminum. I had a problem on the track where the bolt that the alternator pivots on broke at speed, and I drove through my own antifreeze, which is not good to do at over 100 miles an hour.
Wow.
And I came back and I changed to all silicon hoses, and I got aircraft aluminum tubing and designed my own tubing so that will never happen again.
Okay, well let's take a look at that. So all silicone type hoses, and then it looks like you've got some like couplers in between
Right.
the hoses on the top, and then you've got a pre-bent piece on the bottom.
Correct.
Well, that's very cool.
And the oil filter I run on this is an oil filter that was designed and built by an aircraft company.
Oh wow.
You can take that off and clean the screen in there with brake clean.
Okay.
And there's a really strong magnet, so if there's any particles in there that are attracted to the magnet, then you can clean that. So every 1,000 miles, I pull the filter off, clean it, and I know what's going on.
Wow, that's great. Well, I think that's going to wrap up this portion of the walk around, and I think we're going to stop right now. We're going to regroup, and we're going to start asking Mike some questions. Okay, Mike, I want to elaborate a little bit on the engine choice that you made. We didn't talk about horsepowers and torques and all that kind of good stuff. So what are the specs on your motor? What was the cam selection, or did you have a cam selection with that crate motor?
Yeah, I didn't. You ordered the engine, it came as is. And since I had driven a friend's Cobra with that exact engine, that's the one I wanted. And I asked him at the time, why do I need this big engine with a large carburetor? And he said, because on the back stretch at Willow, you'll be able to pass most of the cars. And I go, well, that's the only reason? He goes, oh yeah, but that's a good reason.
Well, that goes into another thing that we were just talking about off camera. You were mentioning that one of the things that you added to the car that we didn't mention in the previous walk around was that you did a Lexan windshield, and that's for a good reason. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I broke 2 windshields on the track just from hard rubber and rocks coming up, and that gets expensive.
So those were the Factory 5 or
Factory
a safety
5.
Glass windshield.
Safety glass windshield, right?
Okay.
And I installed both of those, and they didn't break until I took it on a track. So the first windshield lasted probably 2.5 years.
So you didn't have the typical wake up one morning, go out to the garage and find a crack in your windshield.
No.
Yours was from hard use on the track.
It was, yes. And I think it's a combination of items hitting the windshield and torque of the car, the flexing of the windshield.
Now, as I look at the front of the car, I noticed, besides the American flag, America, thank you for that. You know what? That leads me into a good question for you. You served in the military.
I did.
You want to talk any about that? What did you do in the military?
I signed up in the Air Force because my lottery number at the time was 7. I didn't really want to go to Vietnam. So I signed up in the Air Force, and I was a jet mechanic. I was in the reserves, and then eventually I lied and told them I was moving so I can get out of my unit, which was in San Bernardino, where it's really hot. You can't even pick up your tools.
Which county are we in right now?
It was just too hot out there, and I was a flight line mechanic. I worked on C-141s.
Wow. Yeah, how long were you in the military?
A total of 6 years.
Did you enjoy it?
I absolutely loved it. One of the best experiences in my life. It was the culmination of getting poor grades in school because I really didn't find an avenue that I wanted to pursue. And after I did that, I found out that if I really tried, I could do really well. And I was an honor graduate in the Air Force.
Wow.
And so I got out of the Air Force Reserves and I transferred to the Navy Reserves because my dad was in the Navy. I wanted to experience that. And so they quickly made me a plane captain on an A-7. And then I spent some time on the Lexington as an World War II aircraft carrier in the Gulf. And I was final check on the deck. And there's nothing more exciting than that.
What was your rank when you finally got out of the military?
In the Navy, I was a first-class petty officer.
And what was your rank in
In the Air Force, I was a tech sergeant.
Wow, wow.
So it was great. I absolutely loved it, and I pursued a career as a mechanic for the airlines, but it didn't work out. The hours were horrible, and I did have an A&P license, aircraft and power plant license, but the hours were horrible, and you would be working with a crew with multiple other guys that did not have that license, and you'd be checking off their work, and I refused to do that because I don't know what kind of work they do, and so I never pursued that, and I ended up being a school teacher.
Well, we'll get to your profession in just a second. I want to ask you about the stickers on the windshield, because I know since you've replaced the windshield, that may not be the entire collection of those stickers. But tell us about those stickers that you've got on the passenger side of the car.
Each of those, twice a year at Willow Springs Racetrack, they open the track up to the Cobra Club. And so we take our cars out there and run them as fast or as slow as you want.
Now, who puts on that show?
The Los Angeles Shelby Cobra Club and Orange County Cobra Club.
Who's the head of that? Do you know?
I do. When I can remember.
Lynn Park.
That's right, correct. Lynn Park, who's Mr. Cobra, and one of the nicest guys in the world. He absolutely is. You'll know Lynn Park because he wears a Smokey the Bear hat. He rents the track and rents it back to everybody else. And for $200, you can run all day Saturday and all day Sunday, and it is the thrill. That's where you should drive fast.
Typically, what day of the year does Lynn put that particular show on?
That show comes on twice a year, Mother's Day weekend, so I can only go Saturday, and then Halloween. And all my kids have grown and moved out, so
Halloween's a little bit easier now.
Halloween's
but
nice.
You still can't swing Sunday for Mother's Day.
No, and my wife's not my mother, but a divorce would cost a lot more than the car. So
the stickers that you've got there, I see 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 of those. So
right.
when did that start, and what's the most recent one you have?
The most recent one is the one I just had over Halloween in October. That's it's on there. 20. 21.
21.
2021. That's the most recent sticker.
And what's the oldest one that's
And
on
the oldest one on the car is 14, and I was going there in 2012. So having broken 2 windshields, I finally put a Lexan windshield in, and that was 7 years ago, based on my stickers,
Right.
2014. And since that time, my Lexan windshield has nicks in it from things hitting it, which would have been absolutely a broken glass windshield, and it has started to get cracks in it. So much for that.
Well, you told me another story about the Lexan,
Well, yeah.
and the actual strut that the flag is hanging from. So elaborate a little bit on that and why the strut is there and what was your experience.
Took out the glass windshield and put in the Lexan windshield. It's great, but it's really quite flexible. On the front straight at Willow Springs, I was doing, 140, and the windshield actually bows in, catches air, and pushes up on that top windshield frame, and the bottom of the windshield came out. My brakes work really well.
Now, did it do any damage to the car? Did the Lexan hit the top of the bodywork or anything like that?
It did no damage to the car. That was the last time I drove it. And then I had to get the support, that rod. And what it does is it pinches the top of the windshield with the bottom of the windshield and brings it together, and that hasn't happened since.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah, all these little things happen that would never happen if you drive it on the street every day.
Now, that brings us to another good question. A lot of guys are hesitant. I can attest to this. You spend a lot of hard-earned money on a paint job, and then you take it on the road, and that first nick you get in the paint is one of the worst feelings that you can have in the world. Your car has, let's call it, patina. It's a well-used, it's a driven car. What's been your experience?
For the first 2 years driving the car, no one would park near it, I would stand by it when it was not in my garage. I protected it more than probably my wife. And I took it to the Factory 5 car show and won Best Roadster. And I accumulated quite a bit of trophies.
Now, when you say the Factory 5 show, are you referring to the one here in Huntington Beach?
Yes.
Are you referring to the one back in Massachusetts?
the one in Huntington Beach.
Okay.
And that was excellent. And on the website, on their website, you can still go back in 2011 and you see my picture shaking Dave's hand. It's sort of neat.
That's awesome.
But I accumulated a lot of trophies from a lot of car shows, but that's not why I built the car. And so my wife started saying, "Oh, great, another trophy? Where are we going to put that?" And I thought, that's the last car show I went to. So now they're in the garage somewhere, and now I track the car. So it's been on every track, and I took it to the London Cobra Show and ran it at Mid-Ohio. And that was just a thrill to meet new people, more friends that have fast cars.
So I want to just clarify this. It's not that you don't go to car shows, because I consider cars and coffee get-togethers and stuff like that still car shows. You know, a lot of times we'll do a breakfast get-together, and it's a collection of, collector cars. So everywhere we go is a car show. So you don't not go to those and just do racing. It's just you don't go to the organized car shows per se anymore.
I don't frequent many car shows because I know there's absolutely no way anymore I can trophy in those car shows. And so it gets me into the car show, so I have a good parking spot. And a lot of the judges, they don't appreciate the fact that you actually drive the car. And they'll say, "Oh, look at these nicks in your car," and they walk away. So I built the car to drive it, and that's what I do.
So if there was just one car show that you would take your car to once a year, if it was a yearly event, regardless of where it was in the country, what would that car show be?
I would say the Fabulous Ford's car show at Knott's Berry Farm, but they haven't had that since COVID. And then the London Cobra Show, which was incredible, and that's a long drive for me, but it's certainly worth it to meet people you read about and hear from, but you never get to meet them. So it's more of that family thing, and it adds to that much more of the build that goes way beyond just driving the car.
Right. Mike, before we go into the rest of these questions, I saw something in the front seat of your car, and I want you to tell me about this. I want you to talk to us a little bit about this. We'll get some close-ups of that in a little while, but I want you to talk about this.
When I built my car, I built it, and I got help only the day that I put the engine and transmission in, because I wanted to build it. And that way I knew, like when I was a mechanic in the military, it would be done correct. And people would often say, "Hey, I'll be glad to come over and help you." And I said, "I'm done building for today." And that's how I handled that. But the truth of it was, my dad helped me even though he had passed on. And he was in the garage with me, and that meant a lot to me, because I had helped him when I was 8 or 9 years old on a car that he rebuilt. And so to me, that was a really special thing. So he liked fast cars. He bought he bought my mom a 442 Oldsmobile, and she never drove it more than 35 miles an hour, but on the weekends we'd go buy a newspaper so he could go street racing. And he liked fast cars, and so he would have loved this car. He would have driven it and smoked the tires off of it instead of me. But I wanted pictures of this because my kids don't ever want me to sell the car because Dad built it. So I put together this book and took pictures little by little of all the build. It helped to have a wife that is a professional photographer. And that worked really, really well. So I have pictures in my book of everything, For instance, we talked earlier about the signatures on the dash, and a great picture of Dan Gurney. I have another picture of Phil Remington signing my dash. And to go back and look at these pictures, and oftentimes if you go to a Cars and Coffee, people say, "Is it hard to do? How do you do all that?" And I'll pull out this book, which is why the book is falling apart. And It has pictures when I first got it. Everybody takes the picture of sitting in the body with and grabbing the steering wheel and sitting there like they're driving their new car. I have all those pictures, and I have pictures of my wife smiling. She was happy that I bought the kit.
And I'm sure you have pictures of your kids in that book.
Yeah,
as
all
well?
my kids are in it, and at the back I have pictures of Jeff Miller when I had it painted. I have pictures. First couple car shows and couple cruises I went to with Factory 5 guys. So it's really, really good memories.
All right. Well, I was going to ask you a question later in kind of the interview section that we're getting into now about, is there something that you have? I was going to refer to a tool, and I'm still going to ask you that question. But is that one of those things, that book, is that one of those things that always elicits an emotional response from you?
It does, although I have many personalities. When I drive the car on a track, I drive it like I stole it. And I don't abuse it, but I drive it really hard. On the other hand, I take really good care of it when I have it in my possession in the garage. And I take care of it like my dad was there and he would want me to do. And so the tools I have, if anybody, that no matter what size your toolbox, it's never big enough.
Well, let's ask that question now then. What's your favorite tool?
I don't really have a favorite tool. My favorite tool is the tool I'm using at the time because it's my favorite because I didn't have to go down and buy one.
Let's take it from a different perspective. What's the tool that you tend to use the most? Is it a ratchet? Is it a particular wrench? Is it a screwdriver, a nut driver, a hammer?
The tool I probably use the most working on my car is one of the many tools I borrowed as a mechanic in the military. A swivel head 3/8 drive ratchet, and it is just taking care of me like my safety wire pliers took care of me.
Now, is that going to be your oldest tool?
Oh no, my tool. I have as a young kid, my dad, who also was in the Navy and was a machinist, he has his toolbox. It's an old Kennedy toolbox, and it has his name on it from the Navy. And as a young kid, he would always say, "Don't go in my toolbox." I still don't go in his toolbox. But that toolbox is like him being there in the garage. So to me, that means a lot to me. And there's things in there that he used that are special to him. And that's just opening up his world when I go into it. So after I'm long gone, my kids will go, "What the heck is this?" And they'll probably just get rid of it. But to me, it's really special. And so
I didn't know I was going to need tissue, Mike.
no tissue, but that's a special thing, and I am sure that my dad still enjoys riding in the car.
So when you look at that toolbox that your dad passed on to you, that would be that emotional, that warm feeling that you get from that particular toolbox, because it brings up those memories of your father.
It does. He helped me learn about taking care of tools and not leaving them in the driveway to rust. As a little kid, he rear-ended a car in our old '51 Ford Woody, and I said, "Now what are we going to do?" And he says, "Well, it's not a problem. We're just going to back it in the garage, go to a junkyard, get a new front end, bring it home, and put it on." And I was like in awe that we could do that, and that's where I first started working on cars, and it hasn't stopped. His business he had a lot of work trucks, and he would bring them home, and I would rebuild transmissions, put in clutches, and do all the work on them. And little by little, that worked out well. And then with the aircraft mechanic experience in the military, as well as being an auto shop teacher in high school, it all came together. And actually the car, the Cobra, was the culmination of the whole life, and that was my retirement gift to myself.
I want to stay on this subject just for a second. And, I think each one of us have mentors. We might not think of them as mentors as as we're growing up. But I remember in high school, I had a really good history teacher who, he wasn't our pal, he wasn't our father. He was just a really good teacher, but he had really good life advice for us. Is there anyone particular in your life you consider your preeminent mentor?
I have to go back to my dad in that his work ethic and showing me what you could do with cars, and he always wanted to beat the next car, and so thus the 392 engine in my car.
So your dad was a racer at heart.
Yeah, he when he went to high school in Long Beach, he had a Model A Ford, and he would tell me that there was a guy that drove around in a Model A Ford to make sure no kids left early. And the goal was to get a car that could beat him so he couldn't catch you. And he used to take his car out to El Mirage and run it out there. So, he would hot rod his Model A. If he could only see what I have now, it'd be incredible.
Well, that's awesome. I know your history pretty well. We've been friends for, a little over 10 years. I know you were a school teacher. Now, how has your experience as an educator or a teacher allowed you to better understanding a car in the sense of building it? And has that experience that you had as a teacher helped you help others build cars?
In the military, I was a plane captain, and I enjoyed working with the guys that helped me out with the plane I had, and I would teach them what I wanted them to do. And that just carried over into my job. And I taught school, and I had kids in class. I worked for Ford Motor Company for a short while as a dealer service engineer, and that was great because I taught people at dealers how to work on cars. But I never worked on my own car. So all these experiences helped me out, and when I got this car, I bought the assembly manual. I never had to attend the school, and I just put the car together. And my own kid, my youngest of my three kids, my son, he said, "You're going to build a car." So I kept a model of a Cobra in the garage to show him what it was going to look like. And his comment to me, and I keep reminding him, is, "You're going to build a car, is it really going to work?"
Well, you bring up your family and your kids. I know you have 3 beautiful kids. As a teacher and as a father, what advice would you give a soon-to-be high school graduate? Would you recommend college, a trade school, or entering the just the job market? I mean, is that something that's child specific, or would you just blanket statement something as good for everyone?
The school district, no names, the school district I worked for tried to channel everybody to a university. And being a shop teacher, I just felt that was totally wrong. I didn't learn a lot in college other than I got a piece of paper that allowed me to teach. But I feel you're either a teacher or you're not. You have mechanical abilities or you don't. It's not a lot you can learn. And the common sense to me is genius. So I look at a lot of people and a lot of kids I had in class, and I would tell them, and I would tell their parents, they don't need to go to university. And I try to guide them towards trade schools in the automotive industry that would take them to a place that would save them a whole heck of a lot of money, because college is quite expensive now. And they can learn this trade that will instantly allow them to bring home well over $100,000 a year.
Well, that leads me into another good question. What do you think the percentage is of high school graduates that should do those 3 different things: college, trade school, or just go directly in the job market? This is opinion. These aren't.
Yeah.
This isn't factually based. But as an educator, especially as an upper high school teacher, you've seen a lot of these kids, and you know what their ambitions may be.
32 years, and
Yeah.
in 32 years, for instance, all these kids that they promote sports so big in high school, in 32 years, only 3 kids made it to professional sports. So what did the rest of them do? But if you learn how to work with your hands, that lasts the rest of your life. Sort of like dancing.
Right. Well, we won't get into that.
It did work at my daughter's wedding.
I'm going to go into a couple of Factory 5 racing specific questions now, Mike. Build not bought is a slogan Factory 5 Racing has recently adopted. How do you see yourself? Do you consider yourself a builder? Do you consider yourself an owner? Do you consider yourself a caretaker? Or is there possibly something else that describes you and your Factory 5 Mark III?
And I would answer that by just saying yes, I am. Building the car, my wife used to say, how do you know how to do that? And I go, I've learned over my life. And this is like the final exam. And now I can safely say there's nothing on the car that I built that went bad. Some of the parts have worn out. That's not my fault, but the car that I built, it's solid. 35,000 miles on it. I would drive it across the country tomorrow, but I look at it as I help out people when I'm there. If I'm at a Cars and Coffee and someone's building a car, they'll share with me, they'll tell me where they live, and if I have that free time, I'll go over and just sort of help them out and get them through that rough patch of building a car.
So with that, what was the most intimidating part of building a car from the ground up? I understand that you had experience as a mechanic in the armed forces, and you had experience at Ford Motor Company as a service person. But how was that, just having all these boxes and this chassis and this body just dumped in your driveway?
It's when this 18-wheeler backed up to my house and dropped it off, and then they carried all the boxes into my garage, and they wheeled the car into my garage on the frame, and then I put it up on jack stands. I was so excited, and then I realized the job I had just undertaken, that I had a lot of work to do. But I absolutely love it. It's not work at all, and I love it to death. Building the car, the only thing I had not done in the experience I had was electrical work. So I talked to Frank, and to Frank, it was like, making chocolate milk. It was like nothing. And to me, it was like, wow, this is great. Although I could read a schematic. So I'd go to Frank's house, or where he's working. He'd say, what do you want to do today? And he would just draw out a schematic, and I would just go home and do it. And I can safely say that now, not one of those things has become a problem ever. Everything works perfect. That was the only problem I had. The wiring I used, that was a separate vendor, and I laid all that wiring out in my garage, and that was just overwhelming because I had never done that. And I can tell you that my car sat there for a month, and I'd go out in the garage and just go, oh, what am I going to do? And I went and visited guys that had cars, and they had the same problem.
Yeah.
And so when you use the family that's available to you, it just really helps.
How has building a Factory 5 racing vehicle or kit changed your life?
There are so many people out there that have common interests with you because of the car, and they're great, great people. For instance, when I got the car, I put a notice on the forum, and I think within 2 days I had over 10 guys in Cobras come up to my house. All it cost me is beer and pizza. And it was great. And I just had met all these people that later became friends, and we went on cruises with. That's one thing. My family goes on rides and cruises with me, which is great. And lately I've been doing car cruises with a special club for older people, old veterans, and the fact that you have that car and I never thought the car would mean that much to some other people just to see it, and it just hits me hard.
Well, that leads me into another question, because you kind of touched on it with something we used to call build parties. But did you get help with your build? And I think you kind of answered that. But what type of help did you get with your car? Because I know that you like to build things on your own. And so, what were those key things that you felt you needed help with? And what are those things on the car that you got help with?
The key things was the wiring harness, putting where to put the relays, and bending the brake tubing. Those were the key things, little things I had never done, but they're not hard once you're aware of them.
Now, did you have help when it came to putting the engine in the chassis, or like setting up the rear end of the car, because it is IRS?
The IRS rear end, no, I solid mounted that. That wasn't very difficult. But all those people that wanted to come over to help me building the car, those are all the people I invited over the day I put the engine and transmission in, because I had an engine hoist in my garage, and they thought it was great fun, and that got it out of their system.
Right.
And so once we had the engine and the transmission in and all bolted in correctly, when they left, that was it.
Now, is there anything special on the car that you thought during the build process you were just going to breeze through, and then turned out to be more work than you thought it was going to be?
I had no idea the body and paint process would take as long as it did. I wasn't aware of that. And the carpeting, I never did carpeting because that was the business my father was in. And if he could have put the carpet in this car, that would have been a beautiful thing. But he was not around to do that. So I had to do that, and I totally appreciated what he had done in the past as far as carpet goes. But assembling the car, I really never had any problem other than finding the time to build it in the garage.
So time was your biggest restriction?
Yeah, because I'm married and I did have a job and I had 3 kids. You know, I'm still a father. Plus, I umpire high school baseball.
Well, I happen to know you still have a job. It's being retired, and I know you're busier now than you were when you were working. But let me ask you, what does your wife, or your family for that matter, think of your passion for cars?
Well, my wife enjoys the fact that if she doesn't know where I am, she just looks in the garage. And I don't play golf, and I don't go to bars, so she knows where to find me. And anytime I go for a drive, it's great because it's a 2-seater, and I know where she is. We can't talk a lot because the car's so loud, but that works out great. My insurance I have on the car will not allow you to drive until you're 25. So my youngest son's 22, so he's anxiously awaiting 3 more years to go by.
God bless him.
And my daughter doesn't want to drive it, and my older son, he tried driving it once, and he's used to a Tacoma pickup truck, and he got in it and gave it the same amount of gas and smoked the rear tires and hasn't been in it since. So, but the family loves the car. They love to go for a drive, and when they have friends over at the house, before they go in the house, they go, "I got to show you my dad's car."
Oh, that's cool. Now, hobbies, a lot of times, are best enjoyed if they include all the members of your family. You know, like hiking or backpacking, stuff like that. Is your family involved in the car hobby? Is this something they share with you? Do they go to car shows? Do they go to track events with you?
Well, you know, a funny story. My daughter, who is very attractive, I hear that from the other guys on the Cobra cruises. So she would come with me on quite a few cruises. And we went to one that was maybe 40, 50 miles from my house, and I brought her. One of the women there, who knows my wife, saw me drive in with her, and she got quite upset that I had some young, cute girl in the car with me. And so my buddy said, "That's his daughter." So yeah, the whole family is involved, and It's great. Plus, we take the car on trips in an enclosed trailer behind a motorhome. And we travel across the country, and if you've never pulled a Cobra out of an enclosed trailer at an RV park, do it 45 minutes before you go anywhere, because every guy's going to come over.
So, what other hobbies do you share with your family?
Really, I assist them in what they're doing. I try to become involved in what they're doing. My younger son has cars. Currently he's 22 and he's working on his 8th car. So he's learned how to work on cars. He's doing quite well. My daughter likes to go for drives. My wife's always welcome to, but she does photography, so she takes lots of pictures of the cars. And my older son lives in Texas, so he doesn't get a chance to do that.
Well, that's going to nix my next question, because I was going to ask you, where do all those hobbies rate on your scale of importance in regards to your car hobby?
I think I can honestly say my favorite hobby is the one I'm doing at the time.
Okay, well that's fair enough.
But when I open up the garage and look in there and see my Cobra, I just think, wow, I need to exercise my car.
Now, I know the answer to this next question, but I'm not going to give it away. Do you consider yourself an obsessive person?
I don't consider myself obsessive. My wife might. But on the other hand, the 25 years we've been married, she's never had to get her car repaired by anybody other than me. So, and none of our cars have ever broken down. So she's pretty happy about that and doesn't ask questions.
Well, I think that's going to kind of answer my next question, which is, can you walk away from an unfinished project for an extended length of time? And if so, how long would that be?
Well, when I was building the car in the garage, prior to getting the car, I put lights in the garage. I got it all set up thinking I'm going to be working on it during the day and after dinner at night. And it didn't happen. So I'm proud to say it took me a year and a half to build the car, and I'm still married, because it's my feeling the divorce would have cost me far more than the car.
What again, I know the answer to some of these questions, but what other cool collector cars or vehicles do you have or own?
Well,
these could include cars that your kids have.
My son, I find cars for him to buy, and he loves it, and then he turns them and sells them and makes money. So he's worked his way up to a BMW 335 IS, which is a 6-cylinder twin turbo. It's a rocket ship with a 6-speed. But I watch him drive it, and I think he's ready for the Cobra, but that'll take a couple years. My daughter drives a nice, safe economy car. And my older son, who happens to be a sheriff, he gets to drive his cars fast and not worry about getting the ticket. So that works well for him. But my car, I have a Lotus Europa. And that's the second one I've had. I wanted to get one because I had one back in the 70s. And it handles great. It's very lightweight until I get in it. And power to weight ratio is over the top. And so I love driving that car. And I have an old BSA motorcycle and an old Honda motorcycle and a little mini trail Honda motorcycle. And I have enough to keep me busy. So all these things, I love it. I'm always out in the garage. And if friends come over, I help them out with their cars.
This one's good, and it kind of pertains to the last one we asked. Are there other cars or vehicles that interest you?
Yes, there are many cars that interest me. I just have to keep them within my budget, and I currently have a 3-car garage, and it's full. So I've told my wife I won't buy other cars unless I sell one of the ones I have. So I haven't bought that car yet. I'm thinking of going backwards, and the car I'm really would like to build is a Resto Rod 55 Chevy.
Okay, well, that's going to lead us into the next one, because you seem to have interest in a bunch of different cars. They're not all muscle cars. They're not all European cars. So if there was one particular car that you could own or just like work on, what would that be?
You know, it would be a car I would want to go back in time, and if I had to do my life over, I would have wanted to be a mechanic on a race car team. And I missed that in my life. I would love to have done that.
Okay, that's fair enough. So let me ask you, I know that you've had a lot of automotive experiences. You've met quite a few famous or infamous people in the automotive industry. Is there one automotive experience you haven't experienced that you really wish you can in the future?
Wow. My visit with Dan Gurney was pretty impressive, and visiting his shop, and my wife telling me, honey, we've been here a long time, maybe we should go. And I thought, maybe you should go. but and Phil Remington talking about suspension systems, you know, and it's just not really. I've run into a lot of people, you know, the people on TV, and Jeff Kindig I met at SEMA, and we talked for a half hour. I mean, just the nicest guy. And these people have so much knowledge. I just want to go by where they work and just sit there, and I can absorb this information. I just feel you can't get it any place but talking to these people.
Okay, let me ask you, are there any things that you would do differently if you were to build that car today versus when you built it?
When I built this car, I wanted to build it to where there was no item when I was finished building it that I say, I wish I would have. I did it the first time. And it cost me a lot of money. And I told my wife the cost of each item was actually half of what it really cost. So,
well, do you worry that maybe she's going to see this video and know that now?
It's too late. So, there's nothing on the car. I just, since the time I built this car and the new IRS is quite a bit better. I probably would not put as large an engine in it, and I would buy a Gen 3 Daytona because I feel that'd be safer on the track. I don't like driving an open car on the track. Even though I wear a helmet, arm restraints, Hans device, I just feel it's not as safe. I don't have a second roll bar because I wanted the car when I built it to look as much like an original as possible. And the funny story I tell is people say, well, what would you say to your wife? She said she's not going to drive in your car because you don't have a second roll bar. I would say, I'm sure going to miss you. So she goes with that, and I don't drive that fast on the street anyway, so I don't feel this required.
Mike, are there any special skills that you learned or subsequently relearned during the build process of your Mark III that carried over into other parts of your life?
A couple of things in the car, you know, doing some of the sheet metal work, that has helped, and that's come in handy around my house. Carpeting has come in handy around my house, but not really a lot. It's come in handy saving my family money when I'm working on their cars. But I've really learned that the car is much more than just a car, and to a lot of people it just brings a smile to their face and makes their day incredible. Oftentimes I read, oftentimes on the forum, people come up to people and say, is that car real? If a person has to ask you, they don't know. So what I tell them is, it's real. And they just get so excited. It makes their day, and you're not going to see them again anyway, so who the heck cares? And so to me, that's how I handle that. If a person comes up and says, that's a Factory 5, who built it, then that appreciation factor is just as great as the fact that I told the other guy and didn't tell him the truth, but it was real.
Okay, well, does your car have a name?
Mr.
And if so, what's the name, and how did you come upon that name?
Well, most cars have a female name. This is not a female car. I mean, this car has cojones. So I named my car, going with the color, Mr. Blueberry, which takes me back as a little kid and my kids. There's a story called Mr. Blueberry, and it was a kid that thought a whale lived in the family fountain in front of the house. And they named the whale Mr. Blueberry, and that's the name of my car.
Well, that's cool. What's been your neighbor's reaction to the car, your neighborhood reaction to the car? Has it been positive, negative? Does it interest any of them? And do any of them complain when you start the car up at about 5 in the morning to take off to Cars and Coffee?
That's another funny story. When the 18-wheeler came into my neighborhood, nobody had a clue what was going on, and they saw this car. So again, I kept the model of the car in the garage, and only one or two of the guys in my neighborhood ever came over and said, "What the heck are you doing?" And they go, "Really, you're building a car?" I said, "Yeah," and that was great. But then when I started driving the car and they heard me take off, I don't know, I would start it up in gear because I don't have a neutral switch on my clutch, and just immediately idle out of my neighborhood because it's early. Later that day, they'd come by and say, "Hey, where'd you go today?" And they would hear me leave. But that's not, I just feel that comes with the territory.
Is there anything you think you would have missed in your life had it not been for the car hobby?
Yeah, the circle of friends, the family of friends that you meet in the car world, whether it's with Factory 5, people coming over with Factory 5s, or you going to their house, now you meet their wife, their kids, and the interests, going to Cars and Coffee and all the people. I go to Cars and Coffee, I don't walk around. If I go to a car show, I don't walk around, I stay by my car. And I almost wish I had a microphone under my hood to hear what people were saying so I could correct them and teach them. And I love talking to people about the cars.
Well, that's going to lead me into what's going to be probably the last question we ask. And that is, when we talk about these cars, we talk about the Factory 5 family and how it's the cars that bring us all together, but it's the people and the relationships that bond us for life. Factory 5 tends to make up a fairly diverse group. Are you friends, or are you close with any people in professions or life achievements that you were surprised to learn share an interest in automobiles? Meaning, you've met people that have all these different backgrounds, professions, and are you surprised that those same people are car nuts?
I am to a point, because I find with Factory 5, the common interest of the car only goes so far. As long as you stay on the car, you're fine. But I have found that the majority of people driving Factory 5s didn't build their entire car, and they don't really know a lot about the car, and they would rather write a check than learn to build the car. And so, just like at car shows, my feeling is there should be the category, those that built them and those that bought them. And so that's my problem that I have to deal with. But I have met some terrific people that come with terrific families and have a terrific car. And no two Factory 5s are the same. And every time you look at one, it gives you an idea for something you can do to your car to make it that much better.
Well, that's very cool. I think what we're going to do, Mike, now is we're going to take your book that your wife put together for
Yeah.
you. We're going to head into the shop, and we're going to go through it page by page, and we're going to see exactly how your build progressed from the time you got your kit delivered until the time you actually got it on the road.
Yeah, I mean, the book is the memory book for me. I know a lot of times on the forum, there's people that every day they post exactly what they did that day, and that's just not me. That's not me. I can't learn that way. I made friends with a couple Franks, Frank Messina being the other. And I would go to these people and look at their car at a Cars and Coffee or a car show and take notes and take pictures with my phone on the next area of my car I was building to know how I wanted to go. So first it was Kuros, his car, which is the car that started this whole process. I saw his car at a hardware store, and then I talked to my wife about it. I took pictures of it, not knowing who he was. And then 2 days later, we went to Laguna Beach, and there his car was again sitting on the street. It was just like, it's meant to be.
Yeah, it was a sign.
Yeah, it was a sign. I needed to buy this car. And then he came out, and I talked to him, and he didn't know me from anybody. And he found out he only lived an eighth of a mile from my house. So I went over to his house, spent some time talking to him, and my car is most like his car. But it's been an incredible experience, and I feel you have to go actually look at hands-on, look at the car, and ask questions. And you really can't do that when you go online and look at pictures.
Absolutely. Absolutely. To open the book and kind of walk us through it, Mike. You know, I'm sure all these photos are by your wife.
Yeah.
Your wife took
Yeah.
the photos.
Yeah.
So, you know, like I said, this book probably has a somewhat special place in your heart. So, you know, as you go through the pages, kind of just explain to us what each page signifies to you.
Okay. The kit was delivered in '09. First start November the 10th, and I go-karted it December the 10th.
So all in that same year.
All in that same year.
Wow.
Yep. It was great days, and of course I have the picture sitting in the driver's seat. I think everybody has to take that picture.
And then this is during the build process. That's what, probably your go-kart.
Yeah, my go-kart.
And then this is after it's completed. That looks like it's up in, what, Foothill Ranch?
No, actually, I think that picture is taken. I think it's back in London, Ohio.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's a cool picture.
So
So it looks like that's your delivery.
that's the delivery, and I had been umpiring that day, and I still have my ball bag on my pants. But of course, I knew what time they were going to come, and the game went into extra innings. So I was a wreck, and took a picture of the couple that delivered it on my street. My wife was smiling. I was one happy guy.
Did you tip your driver?
Absolutely. Oh, you bet. And I made him a whole bunch of homemade cookies.
Oh, awesome.
Yes, they're really nice people.
And then that looks like it's you and your wife?
Yeah, my wife and I in the car. She was happy as a clam. And a picture of Kuros, who really inspired me to do all this. And my youngest son, who now is 22 and can't wait to drive it, but he's got to wait 3 more years because insurance for him won't cover him until he's 25.
Yeah, for all you kids that grew up on the interweb, we used to have to actually take our pictures and have them developed. So we couldn't just digital photography,
Digitize them.
yeah, digitize the photography and just print them out that same minute.
I was truly overwhelmed by all the boxes and all the parts and the check and the lists, and that really took a lot of work. And then taking off all the aluminum panels and marking them, which one was over, which one was under, and where they all went. That was a lot. Kuros helped me a lot with that. And then I I wanted to get the car so it could be a roller, so I could move it in my garage. So I kept working on the corners, and I'd lay them all out, and every day I'd put a different corner together, and eventually we got there. I used to take the body buck, I put wheels on it, and I rolled it over the car and left it in my driveway and worked on the car in the garage. And the homeowners association said, you can't store a car in your driveway because that one doesn't run. And I said, you're correct. And she said, so you got to move it. So I did. I moved it into the street. I said, call the police. And that was the end of that. So you can see the parts. I ordered the engine from Ford Racing. And
So now we get the answer to the question we asked earlier that never got an answer.
Yeah.
430 horsepower, guys. So it looks like what? That's the gas tank laying on the floor of the garage?
Yeah, yes.
And then the engine. And then what do we got in this one right here? Oh, it looks like that's when you got the master cylinder. Put on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So is this one of the build parties that you did?
This is the build party with all the guys to help me put the engine in. And that was the only help I wanted, really.
And so it looks like there's the engine on the hoist.
And you can see on the picture of the engine transmission that's a TKO 600, you can see in front and behind the different positions where you can put the shifter.
Yeah, so you've got it in the mid-shift position.
Right. And then the bell housing in there was a scatter shield bell housing.
It looks like you got the engine all hoisted up there, ready to go in. I actually do it opposite the way you guys got it. You've got the front end of the car high up in the air. I actually raise the back of the car. So it's interesting to see how people do things, differently.
It was for me to do and check and make sure everybody was correct and nobody lost any fingers in the process.
Yeah, they got more. If you only lose one, you still got 9.
That's exactly right. I told him, put your finger in there too far, it'll come back too short. So some pictures of Kuros helping me out, and that was pretty exciting that day.
Now, did you do any video of any of this stuff while you were doing it?
No, my wife took the pictures. I wanted to get the engine in. I wanted to.
So you were less about documenting it. You just wanted to get that thing to run and start driving it.
Start pressing the thin pedal on the right, the fun pedal.
Now, that leads into a good question. Do you miss the building part of it?
I enjoyed the building, but I enjoy more driving it.
Is that right?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. So
I see a Sawzall.
I had to cut one of the braces in the transmission house on the frame, because the shifter where I wanted to mount it on the mid shift would hit it. So I cut that out and then welded it back in a different location.
Okay, looks like there the transmission is sitting in there. And so you got it in the spot, and so the caption is cut frame member to allow more room for the mid shifter. So the next one, it looks like you've got the whole powertrain assembly in, and now you're installing a drive shaft safety loop. So was this something that you fabricated yourself? Is this something you got from somebody?
I think I bought that from a vendor, from Mike Forte.
Okay.
And
I think Mike still sells that.
And I welded it in, and I just, knowing that drive shaft is right about where my elbow is, I didn't want it to come loose.
Yeah. Well, and the fact that you track the car too, you can be up in some high RPMs. If that thing lets go, it can cause a lot of damage.
When I installed the tunnel cover, I made it so it can come off. Look at these pictures. It sure is clean.
So it looks like you've got the red Coney coilovers on the front of the car.
Right, right.
And how many quarts is that oil pan?
8 quarts.
Ooh, big one.
Yeah,
and what company makes that one?
That is actually the one that came with the engine from Ford Racing.
Okay. Is it a Ford piece, or do you remember?
I don't know that. I believe it's a Ford piece, and add that to the remote-mounted oil filter and oil cooler. That holds a lot of oil.
So who's that sitting in the passenger seat?
That's my older son.
And whose beautiful red car is that?
The guy right above him with the hat on, that's Kuros.
Okay.
And that's his car that I really copied mine after.
So this was the inspiration for your car, other than the color.
Right. I saw the car twice, and I said it's got to be the car I need to have.
Wow. And so these are going to be the two that you had sign the dash. This is going to be Dan Gurney.
Right. I had gone to Oshkosh Air Show, and I had the dash with me, and Carroll Shelby was there. The line was about 100 people long, and he wanted $300 to sign it. And I just said, no, that's not going to happen. I don't want your signature that bad. So I went to All American Racing and saw Dan Gurney, and I saw Phil Remington, who just said, we're happy to do it.
Now, you just told me an interesting story about Phil Remington, and you ran into one of his kids.
Right. I was at Cars and Coffee in San Clemente with the Cobra, and this young lady walks up and she goes, that's my dad who signs your dash. And it was Phil Remington's daughter.
Oh, that's an awesome story.
Which was really neat. Really, really neat. He's just such a nice, kind man. I put some plastic over those signatures because I didn't want anything to happen to it during the build, because I couldn't put that back on.
Now that brings up a good question. What do you clean your dash with so you don't mess up those signatures?
I use water.
That's it, huh?
Yeah, really. It can get dirty there.
No cleaning agents whatsoever. Just a damp cloth and some water.
Silver permanent marker.
Okay.
So in this next picture, you can see I have we had talked earlier about a partial kit, and those are all billet parts. There where the oil filter is. I have a temperature controlled valve that doesn't allow the oil to flow through the oil cooler unless it's warmed up.
Mm-hmm.
I have an additional fuel filter here. I'm running a mechanical fuel filter on this by Edelbrock that's puts out a lot.
Fuel pump.
Yeah, fuel pump.
Right,
I'm sorry.
Right.
Fuel pump. Right. And the only Chevy part on the whole build is this little riser right here for the coolant.
Oh, the coolant neck. Yeah.
Yeah, otherwise it's all Ford.
Right.
It's all Ford. Even if you look on a lot of dashboards of these, the start button I mounted, they're chrome. If it's a chrome one, it's from a Honda S2000. I can't have that on this. It's a Ford car. The one I have is off of a GT40.
Okay.
It cost me quite a bit more.
Oh.
But
you didn't want that Honda part on there.
that's correct. That's really funny. So you can see my fuel filter. I can put it there because my pumpkin doesn't move.
Right. And it looks like, this is a view of the IRS in the back, so you can see the axles. The tone rings looks like they're still on the outside of the differential housing.
And since this time, I put on new drive shafts. These did not hold
Those are the
up to
originals?
horsepower. Those are the original.
Right.
In the garage, I turned the body upside down and coated it with a truck liner.
You remember which product you used?
Boy, I don't recall. That was 10 years ago.
You should have wrote it in this book.
Yeah, I know. So that worked out really well. It eliminates a lot of the cracks in the body from rocks from the underside hitting.
So the stones get absorbed. The energy gets absorbed.
Absorbed in
the truck
undercoating.
bed lining.
But there is companies, I don't have them on my car, that make a fender liner that you can buy.
Okay. So it looks like it's starting to look like a car.
Yeah, I put the body on, checked it out, and I put in one of Cannonball's drop boxes in the trunk so I'd have a lot more room, and that's been a godsend.
Now, have you ever taken the car for weekend getaways with the wife?
Yes.
And how was that as far as
It works.
space planning?
Well, she's lucky. She's small, so her clothes don't take up as much space. On the other hand, it doesn't work. But I found 2 suitcases that fit underneath the back of my car.
And just spoiler alert for you guys that are out there building Mark IVs, the upper shelf of the trunk is smaller on the Mark IVs versus the Mark IIIs. So those bags don't fit in your car.
So that was that. And then on the top here, you can see where the normal spot is where it's mounted, and I moved it quite a bit
For the
ahead of that.
shifter,
For
right,
the shifter,
right.
And the top panel of that, I just made it so I can take it off.
Now, is it the material that you got with the kit,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
did you purchase thicker material and make a new one?
No, it's the material. It came with the kit, and then when I carpeted it, I put fat mat on top and then carpet that overlaps the sides, and then I seamed the edges, so when it's finished in the car, you don't really notice that.
Wow.
But it makes it really nice so you can access the transmission, add the fluid, check on your drive shaft. And there's
Very
a lot
good.
going on under there.
Very good.
I had this big air filter that I thought looked really cool, but it wouldn't fit.
I have one of those upstairs if you'd like it back, like one back.
So I took it off, but it looked good in the picture.
Yeah.
So now we're loading the car up to take down to the bat. And I borrowed a truck and I borrowed a trailer. Because at the time I didn't have any of that.
Yeah.
Took it down to get it painted, and then
Well, one thing that that just came to mind as I'm looking at those pin drive wheels.
yeah.
You really couldn't use donor wheels. So
Yeah,
you
yeah.
were kind of forced to get those wheels and tires mounted early on your build because of the pin drive length on everything.
And I feel the tires look and the wheels look correct on the car, but tracking the car becomes a problem because if I want race tires, I have to buy a complete set of pin drive wheels.
Right.
They're not cheap.
I know. I know. So it looks like this is the completed go-kart.
And then go-kart with the different hoses for the footbox cooling. And I also have an access panel I put into where my relay is.
Yeah, and again, you guys with the Mark IVs don't realize that access cover that becomes prevalent on all the Mark IVs wasn't included on any of the Mark IIIs and before. We had to actually cut those access panels and make covers for them.
And I think this is bump steer, I believe. I don't remember, but that's a long time ago.
Yeah, that's a bump steer kit. Probably from Mike Forte as well.
Okay.
So now we're getting into the finishing stuff here. Looks like you got the carpeting going in, the seats, the harnesses.
Carpeting, you can see the seam across the bottom of the panel where my shifter is. And then the battery box I put in, which isn't a problem because the pumpkin doesn't move. And the drop box is here. And what I did is I just got a piece of aluminum, carpeted it and seamed it, and that comes off. So I can get to that drop box.
All right. And it looks like you've got some aftermarket parts on your car as well. I see something here, Russ Thompson's pedal.
Ross Thompson pedal, and I had him redo the turn indicator.
Okay. And then you got a Ford GT button, which you just talked about.
Right, and these are Sumitomo tires that were good to roll it around in my garage only.
Yeah, they're a little hard.
Yeah, they don't give you a little bit of traction. But I drove this go-kart 100 miles in my neighborhood. No one said anything, and it sure was fun.
That you know of.
That I know of. That's correct.
No one said anything to you.
So,
Now, are those Speed Hut gauges?
yes, those are the ones that come with the kit. I had bought those classic gauges with the kit.
Okay.
And as it says right here, TYVM, which means thank you very much, Frankieski. And the car started to come together.
And it looks like the carpet that you used is kind of like a loop.
Yeah, it's a
carpeting.
short loop. I felt from the homework that I did that was period correct. Then we're down at Jeff Miller's place down in Temecula.
Now, who's that guy in the driver's seat? Because it doesn't look. This guy looks a lot younger than you.
That guy didn't have gray hair
Is
either.
that your kid?
Looks just like me. Even the pants fit looser than. So down there, I dropped the body off. He fit the doors, the trunk, and the hood, and I left it there. Brought it home, and then the pictures you're seeing here are when he told me to come on down, and he'll put the body on. So Jeff came down, bad back and all, and put the body on the car. And I was one happy camper. I just had to go home and put on all the bling.
Jeff looks a lot younger too.
This was 10, 11 years ago. But the paint job was beautiful. And you can see, we talked earlier about the scoop. So you can see in the one shot there where the scoop's missing because he cut it out. Then he mounted the new scoop on using screws. You don't want to use rivets on fiberglass because it causes it to crack.
Boy, there's not a whole lot of room between that oil cleaner or air cleaner assembly and that hood.
And that's why I went to that new one I showed you.
Yeah. Now, did you borrow the same trailer and the same truck twice?
I absolutely did, and filled it up with gas.
You got your money's worth out of that.
That was a good deal. That was a good deal. These are the pictures when it was shiny, brand new. You can see in this picture here where the carpet stops on the side of the transmission housing, and that whole housing just comes off. All you do is just undo the screws for the shifter boot and take the shifter off, and it makes it so nice.
Now, have you ever had that panel off?
Yes, many times.
Oh, okay.
Many times. Just before I track it, I check the bolts at the drive shaft.
All right.
And I put bumperettes on my car because the quick jacks to
Suck.
me, all they do is catch your ankles and bite them as bad as the exhaust pipes do people that don't know it's hot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't go there. So this I entered my car the first year. Actually, what the sheet metal around the radiator wasn't even complete. I entered it in the Huntington Beach Factory 5 car show, and I won Best Roadster. I also won Best Ford Racing Engine. I don't know how many other guys had those engines, but I won that. And there's a picture of Dave Smith shaking my hand, and then while I was back at Factory 5 back east, I had him autograph it.
And so this car show is the Huntington Beach car show?
Yes.
I recognize that car that's next to yours.
So at this point, my license plate stands for I love STRS, where in California is the State Teacher Retirement System. So it's either going to get me applause or shot. Then I took it to some car shows and started meeting the family. Is that your car?
It is. I didn't know I made your book.
Yeah, well, I can tell it says Slytherin.
Yeah.
So, and
That's,
the two
Sans Paint.
they have the two people standing to the left there. Both of them built cars. This is the guy in the shirt there. He's the guy that built the car. Then he moved to
I think
Nevada
this
and
goofy
sold
guy
it.
right here might be me.
So I entered car shows, and
Did
then,
you have my permission to print that picture of
I
me?
did. You gave me permission. I just lost the piece of paper.
So this is a car show in 2011 at Seal Beach. So you actually entered the car in quite a few.
Yeah, this car show here was on the Santa Monica Pier, and I competed against all of the LA Cobras. It's put on by Los Angeles Cobra Club,
Wow.
and I got second place. And I couldn't complain. It earned Best of Show at Hooters.
Yeah, I don't think your wife was there that night.
Then I went back to my high school, Venice High School, and they had a centennial car show, and I got second place there.
You remember who won first?
I don't kind of. I think the car that won was an AMX.
Oh, well, that's a cool car too.
Yeah. Used to go on a lot of cruises. Take my family. It's a picture of myself and my daughter, and that's up in Malibu.
Yeah, and then we dropped down into Zuma.
Right. That's pictures right on the beach there.
Mm-hmm. That's a beautiful ride if anybody's looking for a great ride in Southern California.
And this was a drive with some friends, driving out towards Julian. This happens to be right near a really nice bakery. Try Julian Pies if you ever get out that way.
Another nice ride.
That's the conclusion of my book.
And that's it.
But not by far not the conclusion of the driving of my car.
No, the story goes on.
I do have pictures, they're not in the book, of different racetracks I've been to, which is really a lot of fun. But you can't tell it's me because I have a helmet on. But the car is absolutely incredible. It really changed my life. And every time I go in the garage and I see it, it just brings nothing but smiles to my face. Miles of smiles. And lots of friends out there, and anytime you drive it, I always tell my wife, when people wave to you, I said, they're not waving at me, they're waving at you. They think you're good looking. And she thinks it's the car. I go, no, it's her. So, it goes miles. It was an incredible investment, and the return is more than 1,000,000 times.
Well, Mike, again, I want to thank you so much for sharing your time with us here in the shop and sharing your time with all those that are going to watch this. So, thanks again.
It was great.
All right, I want to thank you guys all for watching. I really want to thank Mike for bringing his car out here today and spending time with us and giving us a brief explanation of how he built his car and his insight on the car hobby. So we'll see you guys all next time. Have a great day.